Welcome inside TCO Studios for this edition of Pick Six, the show where you ask the questions and we find the experts to answer them. This one starts off with a bang. We've got 2024 Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist Jared Allen to answer this question. With the recent news that the Vikings are headed back to London next season, Aaron from Shakopee wants to know, what did you like most about playing games in London? Here's Jared's answer.
So I saw that today, that the Vikes were back in London, and my experience in London was amazing. So I can only imagine what it is now. And so I thought the fan experience was great. Wembley Stadium was insane. The crowd very educated on when to cheer, when not to cheer, and you saw the entire NFL represented as far as jersey-wise, right? I thought the experience was fantastic. My wife came over with, so all the families were there too. So I think the NFL did a great job of providing a fun, safe atmosphere for the players and the families. We switched venues, so being out in the countryside, you get to see different parts of England there as well. So the London game was great, and we won. So maybe I don't know, what's the Vikings records in London? 3-0? Might as well be a home game.
Thanks, Jared. It's actually his fourth straight time being named a Hall of Fame finalist, and hopefully we'll find out soon whether or not he makes the class of 2024. As for the London game, opponent and timing not announced yet, but as always, we'll let you know as soon as we do. Moving on to the next question. It is from Lewis in Walker. He wants to know, the Vikings haven't drafted a defensive lineman in the top 2 rounds in over 10 years. They also could upgrade the center position. Is this the year they improve the trenches? Lewis, we thought Vikings radio analyst Pete Bursich could weigh in on this one.
Thank you, Lewis, for the question. And you're right. It's been a while since the Vikings have drafted a D lineman up high. And I think it might be the right time to do so, only because of the Brian Flores scheme. When you have all these guys walked up at the line of scrimmage, what doesn't happen to those defensive linemen? They don't get double teamed very much. This is a very interior D-line friendly scheme. And honestly, if you're a free agent in the NFL, this is where you want to play. This is the scheme you want to be in. So with that being said, don't be surprised if we draft one even later and we get a lot of play out of them next season.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate your insight as always. He's continuing to do more film review. You can check those out this offseason on Vikings.com. Moving on to question number 3. There are a lot of you who want to know about the Vikings' future at the quarterback position, and this first one is from Derek Stark. He asks, do you think the Vikings will re-sign Kirk Cousins and draft a future starting QB in the NFL draft? Vikings seasonal editor Ellis Williams had this answer for you, Derek.
Appreciate the question, Derek. When it comes to the Vikings quarterback room, it's important to keep in mind what General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and head coach Kevin O'Connell said at their end of the season press conference. Both stress how they'd love to have quarterback Kirk Cousins return to the team. Of course, both sides would have to find a deal that benefits both of them, and those negotiations are ongoing up to and possibly through free agency. As for the draft, the evaluation has already started for the most important position in sports. With the Senior Bowl coming up and the Combine later, the Vikings front office will be gathering as much intel as possible on what is a loaded NFL draft class. And then in the grand scheme of things, it's important to remember that the team is always going to want to keep their options open, which likely means having a room that is going to be able to compete when we get into OTAs and minicamp. So for the Vikings, I think all options are on the table as they unpack and attack the quarterback room for 2024.
Thanks, Ellis. You can find his work weekly on Vikings.com. It's time now for question number 4, and guess what? Similar theme. It's all about the quarterback. What is KO and Kwesi looking for in a young QB, and will this be the year they identify that QB early? Well, Trevor, we have Vikings Entertainment Network's Gabe Henderson on hand for this one.
I appreciate that question. I do believe this is the year the Vikings select a quarterback. Not sure if that's early or if that's late, but if it's early, I'm sure head coach Kevin O'Connell and general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah are looking at a guy that can process things quickly and understand the game, how it comes to them. As a quarterback, there's so many different variables that are going to come your way. So when you're in that combine room and Kevin is asking you questions, there's going to be a big whiteboard, a bunch of plays, and that quarterback is going to have to dissect all those plays in real time and give it back to him. And that's going to be the guy, in my opinion, that I believe Kevin and Kwesi are going to select in this year's draft.
Appreciate the answer, Gabe. Thank you for the insight into the combine, which is just around the corner. Hard to believe. On to question number 5, which has the similar QB theme. Ryan wants to know, number 1, what do we do at QB? And number 2, should we re-sign Danielle Hunter or let him go? Purple Insider's Matthew Caller answers your question.
When it comes to the Vikings quarterback situation, the first thing they have to do is get together with Kirk Cousins and his representation and figure out what everybody's looking for, what type of deal Kirk Cousins would take to return to Minnesota, what their goals are as far as being able to build the roster around a contract for Kirk Cousins. And if they can't come to an agreement with Cousins, then they have to look to the draft. They have the 11th overall pick, and there is as many as 6 quarterbacks who have been projected as first rounders, and also free agents, Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew, that they could use as potential bridge quarterbacks to go along with a rookie if Cousins does not return, or they could go shopping and try to see if there's a trade for another quarterback available. And as far as Danielle Hunter, should they bring him back? Absolutely. He's incredibly good at football. Does that mean he's going to come back? Well, that's harder to say, because Danielle Hunter with 16.5 sacks is going to be very, very much sought after in the open market. So we'll see if he returns.
Thanks, Matthew. He'll be weighing in all offseason long on his podcast, Purple Insider, which you can find wherever podcasts are available. Moving on to question number 6. It's the final one of the show. Chad says the Vikings have a great opportunity with the 11th pick to grab a top player. If Kirk resigns, do you see trading back from 11 as being highly valuable to get depth at a high-need position like defensive back, defensive lineman, and offensive lineman? Fox 9 sports anchor Ahmad Hicks tackles this question.
Hey, Chad, I think you hit the nail on the head. If the Vikings do re-sign Kirk Cousins with that 11th overall pick, I think they should be trading that away and using that to acquire more draft capital or bring in more pieces that can help your team. As we all know, the Vikings need to address their offensive line, their defensive line, and their defensive back position. So if the team does re-sign Kirk Cousins, I can see them trading away that 11th overall pick to help them bring in more pieces. If they don't re-sign Kirk Cousins, I can also see them using that 11th overall pick to move up and draft the quarterback of the future. So a lot to be seen here in the next couple of months.
Thanks, Ahmad. Appreciate that insight. The draft is only 3 months away. So hard to believe this offseason is on a roll by now. And we'll continue to have more Pick 6 episodes as we get further and further into the league year. For now, if you want to submit your questions, you can do so on Twitter at Tatum Everett, or look for my call for questions on the Vikings Twitter page. Thanks for watching this episode of Pick 6.